today we are here to discuss Pest.
Not Randy.
Yeah, not your kid brother, your kid sister. No, we're talking about the game Pest. So this is a recent Kickstarter arrival, and this is the upgraded deluxe version of it. So we got all the bells and whistles that come with it here. So, I know that you found some online, which we'll get to in a moment, that were cheaper in price, so I don't know what was in those versus this. But
correct.
Before we get into any of that detail, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell down there so you can follow along, as we got a ton of Kickstarters and crowdfunding games in general have come in the last several days, and we got some previews for games that are going to be crowdfunded soon, so gotta get those up too. Yep. So Rob, what can you tell us about this game?
As Randy mentioned, it's a 2024 release, so overall rank is 5,903 with a rating of 7.7, plays 1 to 5 people. Pretty broad range for playtime, 60 to 150 minutes. I'd say that we did at least 2 hours.
Yeah, well, we had some interruptions too.
We did, but ages 13 and up, and I think that's about accurate too. There's a little bit of meat to this game. Designed by Thomas Nielsen and Kai Stark. Art by Daniel, sorry for butchering the names, looks like Kunha and Sarah Stanoska. Published by Arcona Games. Now, as Randy mentioned, we got a couple different price points. So I went online, looked it up. Miniature Market had the retail version for $30. Pretty darn cheap. Kickstarter, Randy paid $99 for the version you got.
Okay.
And it looks like just about everything was part of the Kickstarter version, so I don't think you had to pay any extra for the upgraded parts. But they did have additional add-ons that I think we got everything on. But I did see one person selling this version of the game on Board Game Geek for $129.
Okay, so that's not a huge markup.
Yeah, not too bad.
All right, so let's talk about what you get in the Kickstarter version. So first of all, you get a large board. This is a table hog.
This is a table hog.
So you've got personal player boards, which the standard edition comes with just not inlaid boards.
Right. We got one person that had their board on the table. Yeah. Everybody else had to use side tables.
Because in addition to your player boards, there's also an influence track. There's a track that shows, well, it's actually a storage place for buildings, and it also has kind of what the award is each era.
Right, and then bowls for all the tokens, and there's just a lot of stuff.
I mean, the bowls don't come with it. Those
but
ones
still.
Miranda 3D printed. But yes, there's a lot of bits that you're going to be using. That said, some of those bits they didn't give you enough of. So when we played it 2 players, Miranda and I, we ran short on the victory point chips. And with 3 players, we went ahead and just went straight to our victory point poker chips because it wasn't even worth trying. There's also negative victory point chips with it, which you don't want those. So far, we haven't had anybody get those yet, so that's good. There's a bunch of cardboard potions, but everything else is represented by a track on your player board that has these are upgraded part of the Kickstarter, where these would normally be cardboard. These are wooden, and they move up and down up to 5 you can store. You do have the
Plague Doctors.
Plague Doctors that are really nice. They're very intricate.
And each one's completely different than the other, so they're very unique by player.
And then you got the player color. You can choose which one you want to put in. There's no significance to the differences on them, so you can choose whichever one's your favorite.
I got the one with the dog.
And you've got this castle. Well, it looks cool. In theory, it was a good idea. In practice, it doesn't fit together perfectly, and the holes for the towers are just perfectly in balance so that the towers all lean. So if you're in Pisa, you're in good shape because all the towers are going to lean. But yeah, it's not quite as functional as just playing it without the castle.
Right.
But it looks pretty cool.
I mean, table presence is great.
Yeah. Now, if you didn't use the castle, they actually have wooden bits for these, and I think that would have been fine. But the main thing is there's an area of the board that you're going to assign your pieces to they put fencing around the edges of 3 of the sides
to keep them in,
to
which
keep them
makes
in.
sense.
But since this doesn't fit perfectly into the slots, the backside being open,
And
these
not
just
having
fall
vents. Yeah,
through.
fall through.
So
So we had a little bit of a hard time counting all the little meeples that we assigned to the castle.
So I think the more practical way to play would be without that, but it looks cool on the table.
It does look cool.
So it definitely draws your attention amongst all the other chaos on this board. Because there's a lot of little tokens that you're going to play on the board. If you add the event deck, which we did this game
And we
playthrough.
recommend it.
Yeah, we liked it. It's going to add these more tokens to the board that are, so just taking up even more real estate on this board. See, I can't say the board is oversized for what it has because there's a lot of bits that are going to go on it and it doesn't leave.
Yeah, and there's no empty space for sure, so it's very busy. But we did have a hard time with the roads.
Yeah, the roads.
So the roads are very closely the same color as the cities and the terrain itself. So we had a hard time. I had to do multiple times making sure I could track where I needed to go because I couldn't see the road very well.
Yeah, and to make adds insult to injury, they put a waterfall that isn't a road in the midst of it that's the same color as the blue roads.
Right.
So you're going down and, I thought I was going down here, but I'm falling to my death down a waterfall. This is set in the theme of the Black Plague.
Right.
And, that's hence the reason they got the Plague Doctor on the cover. And it does, which we'll get the theme here in a little bit, but it's a very dark board as a result of that. And I think that decision is kind of cost them because they needed to brighten something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that maybe if they just had a slight highlight around the different roads, or maybe a color of it, because each of the road is a different color transportation. So maybe if they highlighted it that color, maybe it would make a difference. And kept the rest of it dark because I really like the look of the villages because, I mean, they are dark, I think, as they should be to, give you that feel of, all this mass depression and death that was going on at the time.
Yeah.
But it was very hard to move around on the map. So not a huge gripe, but it was kind of annoying.
Yeah. Then there's another auxiliary board which stores your kind of round and era cards. I mean, there's 3 cards on it, and then there's a track by each one of those. Those tracks, we have the wooden bits to mark where they go. And then off to the side of that, you got 2 more piles of
so
cards.
We go all the way. I mean, we're going off camera here, but we even got they're called Pest cards and Aid cards. And so those go off the side,
and they're all tarot size,
and they kind of help keep track of the round that you're on. So they are required, and they make sense where they're at and what they're for. But we do have a little gripe on that too.
Yeah. So quality of the components, I mean, this is upgraded.
It's definitely above average for the upgraded.
The price point, I don't think is bad for it.
I don't think so either, especially if you got it at that $99 price point. I think that's a really good deal for all of this.
Yeah, but as far as some of the functionality, I can't go as high as a 9. I'll probably go ahead and give it an 8. I mean, the board is nice. It's not got a linen finish, though. It's kind of a smoothish finish. And it does leave fingerprints really bad.
It does.
It folds really nice and flat, though. It doesn't bow. And the inlay boards don't bow either, which is nice.
And the inlay boards are really good.
Yeah, they are really well done. So I'll probably go 8.5 because of the inlay boards.
I think I'm an 8.5 just because I do like the layout of the board. I like the layout of all the components. The inlay boards are really nice. The card stock is really good. It's good and thick cards. Now, again, really not... there's a little bit of a linen finish, but not much of one. But that doesn't bother me because you're not shuffling them a whole lot, so you're really not messing with them.
Yeah.
So that part doesn't bother me. But, I mean, overall, the cardstock is really good. So I think 8.5 is a good score.
Yeah. And just like you're not playing with a full deck in the game.
That's true.
Yeah.
So
you're only using a subset of the cards.
But it's the most important cards.
Yeah.
That's why.
All right. So moving on to theme. So obviously, it's a dark theme.
It's a very dark theme.
It's you're playing in the plague. You do have all the people are green, representing
because they're sick.
Apparently, everybody's got the stomach flu, I guess.
That's right.
But you are going around and trying to rescue these people, and it's got a bit of pandemic in it in the sense that
because how it spreads.
Yeah, you can spread if you get 4 sick people in the same location.
Right.
oddly, the roads don't spread, so you can have as many people as sick on that road.
Just the towns,
and if you build a city out or you build 2 buildings in the same city, it won't spread there either. So apparently, close
quarters, large cities, they don't get, they're not contagious at all. So no,
you're protected from them.
Let's not talk about London.
Yeah. So this, doesn't, some of it doesn't quite fit the theme,
right?
But I from a gameplay perspective,
I understand why they did that. Yeah.
But it does feel like you're going around picking up sick people, treating them, and then having them help you put to work.
And the theme that the cards have for the aid and the pest, they're really well written because it's not like graphically dark. You don't see like blood, guts, and gore or anything like that. But there is enough subtlety where it's saying, oh, a massive amount of people are sick and now we got to help them. And so I think it helps with the theme to keep it light enough to where it's not gruesome.
And they tie it to the location where they spawn the people, which is each of the pest cards spawn more people that are sick in those locations, and I like that.
Right.
I also like the way the 2 cards, the aid card and the pest cards, fit together. When you flip them over, they become a book.
So the first card you flip over is a pest card, and it's going to tell you, and we'll talk more about it in gameplay, but it tells you where the sick people are going to go. But then you flip the aid card, which you don't use until the end of the round, but it looks like an open book.
Yeah.
And it does a really neat job of that.
Now, the one thing I didn't like about those cards is for whatever reason, they decided to tie the current era to the next era up, so that
to kind of see some rewards that you get if you place well.
So the first era, or first year of the first era, you don't get a aid.
Right.
Which, that's fine, but I think they could have handled it better. Because what they did was they put the top of the card has the reward, and the bottom has, every card has the same thing, where it's saying first, second, and third, or first, middle, and last, I should say.
And I think it'd have been a simple fix. Like, if you wanted, the first round of Era 1, have a special deck for just those. Yeah. Then you could do that system for the rest, except for the last era of Era 3. Then you can have another special deck that would fit that. Yeah. So then that way it would line up better.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways they could have solved it better than what they did, because it was very confusing looking at it, because the rule book just kind of glosses over it, which we could talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about the rule book. There's a lot to be desired there.
Yeah, but the way the cards are tied to one another, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not intuitive.
It does kind of break the theme a little bit, too, so it doesn't really fit with what you're doing.
So, but apart from that, they've got... all the buildings have different shapes. I like that. The obviously the castle does add an air of presence to the game. The board is forgettable in the sense that it's so dark that if somebody's walking by, they're just going to see a black.
Well, no. I mean, what you're going to see is you're going to see a bunch of green and a bunch of the player colors, but the board itself is lost in translation.
Yes. And all of the scoring board and all that, everything is black in this. It's a very dark game. Your player boards are actually brighter than the rest of it, and they're a dark brownish color.
Right.
But they stand out as lighter.
They do.
Because
and the artwork on the boards and the artwork on the cards are fantastic.
Yes, I love the art.
Really like the artwork on the cards.
Yes, and the board is very functional the way they laid it out. It's very reminiscent of 2 games. Viticulture comes to mind with the buildings. And then the way the play is, we just did that Rome, was it Nova Rome? It was one of the Rome games. Right. We had a whole flurry of Rome games come in at once. But the one where you basically put a tic-tac-toe board, you have an
action for a row and column. Yeah. So, it's really neat.
So it's like taking bits and elements of lots of different games that we like and combined it into this.
So thematically, what do you think?
I think the art is really good. I like the technology cards art too, because it looks kind of like it's different than the rest of it, so it's not fitting. The art on the other cards is so beautiful. The art on that is more hand drawn. It looks more like
almost like a schematic or blueprint, but not quite.
But I think from from the art perspective, docking a little bit because the board I think is a little darker than it should have been. I think the darkness is thematic, but I think they could have brightened the roads or something to make them stand out. I'm probably going to give this one an 8.
Okay, I think I'm going to go a little bit higher. I think I'm an 8.5. I would have definitely given this a much higher score if the board was just somehow, whether it's graphic design or something, just where the roads were just a little bit easier to follow, I would have given it a higher score.
All right, so moving on to the rule book. So again, going with our theme, pure black.
Yep.
It matches the
It
cover.
and I love it. I love the artwork of the Plague Doctor.
The Plague Doctor's
so
really
cool.
awesome. Then you've got, the book is 24 pages long, but the good news is the actual gameplay portion for a standard game is 15, up to page 15, and that's including like 3 pages of just the components, contents, and then setup is actually to page 5. So it's really from page 6 on, and 6 and 7 is really just talking about high-level concepts of the game. So you could really skip those 2 pages, honestly. The components are done well. They got pictures of everything, and it tells you how many there are in the game.
Right.
There's not enough. Not enough victory points, anyway. The setup is done pretty well, but there is a ton of setup in this game. So
yes, there is.
And this is the standard way. There's actually an advanced way where you would swap the locations of all these tokens if you wanted to randomize or distribute them. And we've seen that in some games.
Sure.
But I couldn't imagine doing that in this game.
I can imagine those tokens staying there. I could see that getting kind of a little messy.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many bits on the board as is, and then you're adding more during the course of the game. So I just can't imagine adding more labor to that. Then it goes into the concepts, as I mentioned, then it goes to the gameplay. So page 8 is where gameplay starts. So you really only have 8 to 15. So it's not that bad of a read. Now, the problem is, I think it should have been longer.
It should have been.
Because they glossed over several things in the book.
Or just got things completely wrong.
Yeah.
Compared to... Well, maybe the rulebook
the rulebook, right, you're right. We don't know.
But the aids were wrong, or vice versa. We don't know which.
The cheat sheet is actually really well done, which is a shame that it disagrees with the rulebook. But the cheat sheet has the player actions on one side, and that's very clear to follow. It tells you exactly what you need to know. And then even
additional help on the back.
Yeah, the additional help
with a lot of the clarifications.
Yeah, it walks you through the different things you do at the end of the year, at the end of actions.
It's really well done.
But one of the big things is when you're playing to buy technology, you can pay a potion to wipe the board according to the rulebook, basically.
Get rid of 5 technology.
Yes, in this it says you can get rid of 2.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah, instead of wiping the board, you can replace 2 of them, and so it's completely different.
Right. And that's not the only.
Yeah, there were other variants we found during it, and then it took a long time to figure out the aid card, the reference to the one above, because they really was 1 paragraph long. That section, it was really 1 sentence long. Had to do with referencing the other card, and there was no example.
Right. So we kind of had to figure that one out. But once we talked, it just took us talking it out.
Yeah.
Once we talked it out, it made sense. But yeah, they could have done a much better job of clarifying that in the rulebook.
Yeah, they have the icons here and explaining the rules for each of the icons. I think that's done well. They show examples there for like what you do when you're acquiring the people and healing them and all the different actions you can take. It was frustratingly well designed as far as that goes, which we'll get to in gameplay. But I don't think it's a bad rule book, honestly. I think it's done pretty well.
Right.
And the fact that you can this is a pretty complex game, and you can get it between really pages 8 through 15.
Right.
And get most of it done clearly. There's only a few that were confusing. The one thing I think is a little bad is the technologies are spelled out in their entirety, which is good. When you throw in the event deck, it introduces a problem. Because this is similar to Planet Unknown, we saw.
Right.
Where normally you're going up the influence track, you're always going up. There's one directional. There's cards in here that let you spend influence. And since you gain things going up the track...
Yeah. And there's no clarification that if you go down, but then go back up, you get those items again.
So then it becomes advantageous in some cases to go down and go back up because you can potentially
there's like one part of the board that gives you 2 potions, which we'll talk about. And coin. And that's really advantageous if you can kind of go back and forth over that and get that lot.
I mean, as a general rule, you want to be as high up that chart as possible. But there's Yeah,
early
if you're only
game?
going to step early game and go
Right.
back 2 spaces, you can get some really significant
Really nice
advantages,
stuff,
which
yeah.
Adam had the ability to take advantage of. And what we had to house rule it, because it didn't have any clarification about the events at all. The
Right.
events came with a little rule thing of
Yeah,
their
there was
own,
nothing about it
and
in
there was
that.
absolutely no reference to it. And then the cards over there, there's no clarifications for any of those cards, the aids or any of the the pest cards or the round cards. So if you have any questions on those, you're out of luck because it's just the technology.
Thankfully, those were pretty clear.
Yeah, the technology is really well done.
Yeah,
they have them numbered.
There's an index in the back.
Yeah, and they detail every one of them. But the thing is, we never really had any confusion about those cards. They were so clear.
They're so clear. Yeah.
So yeah, I think they've done a pretty good job. And there's an icon glossary. I think this should have been on a cheat sheet for everyone. It's on page 22 out of the rule book, so you have to.
I mean, they have a little bit on the in-game scoring, but it's not fully fleshed out.
Yeah. So this actually helps, but there was one icon on here that also was confusing because when you contribute to the castle, it's kind of like burning those people. They go back to the supply. It says in the rule book, but then here the icon that they're referencing says take back a healthy person from capital. So it's confusing because that icon is misleading. It's like, no, you're supposed to spend them, but you get the victory points for each one that's in the castle. But that's not at all what that says.
Right.
So, yeah, it's very confusing on that front.
It is.
So, all in all, I think I'll give this rule book an 8. I think it does pretty well for the pieces it does well.
Yeah.
It's just that there's some serious missing.
I think that we relate your cheat sheets with the rule book. And because the cheat sheets were so grossly different, I think not grossly different. I mean, mostly it was good, but there was some serious differences that were important. So I even though I didn't read it, and I generally go off of your recommendation for, I'm going to go 7.5. That really bothers me about the technology cards.
It's a half a point. You're making a big to do about like you've gone way off.
Because it bothers me.
All right. So
don't judge me.
Moving on to gameplay. So you rebel. All right. Moving on to gameplay. So you start the game out. You've got your plague doctor, and you've got They've got a really clear picturing of where all your starting resources go. You're going to get a card that you get to draft. Basically, there's 3, one for each player count.
Yeah.
Turn order, you choose one, and it'll have potentially 3 different locations in a region of the board that you can choose to start your plague doctor on.
And you've already done setup, so that's important to remember because the 3 cities it recommends, there might be a couple of dead cities, and you don't want to start there.
Yeah. So you're going to play onto an open city because you have to play your castle along with it. And your castle will give you a free production site wherever you place, and you get whatever resources on the location that you build on. That's what resource you will produce if you choose to produce action. Now, after that, you're going to then start taking action. So the actions are set up on a tic-tac-toe like board.
Right.
And so your top actions, which I consider the primary actions, you've got a production, you've got movement, and you've got build. And you will want to do all those things
every time.
But you can't.
You can't.
And then going down, you've got research, which gives you the technologies. You've got placing people.
Placing healthy people.
And then you're curing people. All of these are great.
Yeah, those are important.
Yeah, but they're kind of secondary in the game. I mean, they're not really secondary, but they feel like they're secondary. Because you want to do those top ones.
Yeah, because you want to build, and once you build, you got to get healthy people in it to take advantage of it. And it's really nice if you can combo it to where you build and then place those healthy people. But you have to do things in the right way.
Right. And you can choose the order you do them, but you have to do the complete action before you can take the other action. So the other thing is you can only assign one worker to a box.
Right.
So,
which is also frustrating.
Yeah. Although there's a technology that Adam got to let him bend that rule once.
Like the build in place is really useful.
Yes.
You can only do that once.
Yes. So per round.
Right, per round.
So when you're playing, you're going to start the game with 2 workers, and each era you'll get another worker introduced. So by the end, you'll have 4 workers.
Right.
And let's say I chose this one to move and cure, which is very common. You're going to do early in the game. So if I had chosen a location to place my castle where there started a sick worker on the board, I would have had to pick that worker up, and then anytime I move, if I move into a space in the road or onto a building area, city area.
And it's not even stop. It's if you move through it,
yeah,
you still have to pick
up
any
sick people along the way.
And that's a big deal.
And if your first one's free,
right?
But if you acquire more, you have to pay a food for each one you acquire. And if you don't have the food, you can't go there. You just can't.
You just can't go.
You can't go through that road. You can't go to that location. So you got to plan accordingly. Strategically when you're going to move, you kind of have to know before you move where you're planning on going, because you can get yourself caught in a real bind because these guys accumulate fast,
very quickly.
And as you're moving, so like if you do move and cure, you can pick them up, and you have an infirmary to hold them, and it holds 3 people. That's it.
Unless you get a special technology, that breaks that rule, but generally.
So you got 3 in your infirmary, and that's it. If you go over that number, you can still store 4 more people, but you're going to pay a price for that. So the price is you're going to weaken one of your top abilities. So, which again I consider the primary actions. If you put one in one of those spaces, you're going to either reduce the ability by 1, or you're going to increase the cost of building by 1. Or if you put it in your storage, you can't store more than 4 units of whatever resource, as opposed to the 5 that's your standard. So you're limiting yourself. Early in the game, that's probably not as bad as because you're not going to very often get up to 5, but later in the game, you probably will.
Absolutely.
Matter of fact, you might have technologies that let you go over 5, but if you can't go to 5, then you can't reach those either.
Right.
So you really have to watch that. Now, if you cure them, you can choose one of those costly ones and move them first. But the problem is you're gambling, because when those productions occur, not productions, but each era, when you do the pest card, that next pest could populate in one of your locations,
and you get those people.
And you get those people no matter what. So if you have a building somewhere and a person's plopped in there, you get that person, that sick person. So you're gonna, as you build more buildings, you're putting yourself more at risk of getting random sick people coming to you. The other thing is, if 4 people show up in the same location, it's very similar to pandemic. It basically causes a contagion, and that first of all, that building becomes destroyed. That location becomes destroyed.
Yeah, it's like the city.
You cannot build there anymore. All the people then are removed, and then you're going to put 1 sick person down each road path to the next location. Now, if that creates 4 in that location, it doesn't continue on a la pandemic, but it will. You can actually go over 4 in that case.
As soon as that city populates again, then
it will burst.
Yeah.
So early in the game, you'll look like, oh, this is still manageable.
Yeah, this is nothing.
But after the first era, you start putting 2 down every time.
I mean, most of our roads have 2 to 3 people on every road.
Some of them have 4.
And then most of the cities have 2 to 3 people.
And when Miranda and I were playing the first time we played a 2-player, we had some with 6 to 8, and it was like, there's just no way. It's like, we're just not going down that road. So
instant death.
The roads, can hold any number of people.
And we didn't really talk about what happens if you go beyond that 4th person.
Well, that's why I said we shut down that building.
Well, no, and then, when you get more than the 4th person.
Well, when you get more than 7th person. Because you're going to have 3
more
and
than the
4.
7th.
So if you overflow and you can't store that person, they die.
The 8th, 6th person.
Yeah, it goes to your graveyard, and that's where you get negative victory points.
Right.
So it's not just you get the negative victory points. It's a production each era of victory points that are negative.
And then every time you bump past that 3, you lose 3 victory points.
Yeah, but that's actually less costly than
getting...
It depends on what era you get it in. But if you get it early in the game, you can get -5 every era that you're producing. That's bad.
That's rough.
It's very hard to get them.
And you can't cure it unless... And did you...
I've never seen a technology that brings back people from the dead.
Yeah. Well, we didn't live back then. I mean, Dr. Frankenstein, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But either way, there's no way to get them out of that graveyard. So you're stuck with that negative accumulating victory points, which is harsh.
So don't do that.
Yeah, don't do it.
Don't let it happen. So yeah, you want to manage by curing, and you have the herbs that will actually cure them, which is different than the Black Plague. But yeah, you have some kind of magical herb that will cure them, and if you treat them and you can keep that moving, they become active workers for you. You don't get to assign them as actions, but you can assign them to buildings to help with your production because.
And it does slow things down because not only do you have to get them off the board, then you have to cure them, and then you have to place them.
Yes.
And so it's very specific process to get things moving. So things move very slowly at start.
Although you can score a lot of points on the track of just leaving them on your health track.
Yeah, you can score up to 23 points at the end of the game if you have the whole board filled up.
Yeah.
With healthy people.
But you also get a lot of points for building.
Oh yeah, you get way more than 23 points.
So getting production is very helpful too. So I wouldn't recommend going for the 23 points in the healthy and ignoring the buildings. So yeah, I think there's lots of ways to score in this game. It doesn't feel like there's that much variance in the scoring because all of our scores were pretty close.
Right.
But yeah, as far as just the choices you make, there's a lot of ways. So building is another action. Building lets you build these buildings off your board. This is where it comes very similar to viticulture or any of the building games where like Scythe or whatever, where you're taking things off your board. It's giving you an ability, although in this case it's basically purely production. It's
production of an item, but you do have 3 buildings that are their special buildings. Yeah. And they do give you a little bit of a perk, and some of them are really nice.
Yeah, one of them doubles your production, one of them for that building, and then another one lets you...
And here's the mystery of the game. Somehow, they have 2 buildings. You got your initial castle, and then you have this building that's in the middle. It doesn't require a worker to produce.
They're automated.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I didn't know they did that back then.
So and then you've got one that lets you mint coins. So that is very useful because the coins are wild in this game, and there's not a lot of ways to get them.
There really isn't.
You can trade 2 resources in for a coin, which if you're running high on resources and you're
at the end of the game, it kind of helped you out because you didn't need the other resources. So you be able to trade them in for what you did need.
Yeah, because I was needing building supplies, and I was able to trade them in to build the big tower, and that gave me a lot of victory points.
Right.
So yeah, there's advantage to be able to get coin. So if you build the mint, then you can produce coin from it. It ignores the resource you would have gotten, but you get the coin instead, and that's much more valuable. So there's a lot of different options there. Then you've got research. You can hold 3. I really like the way they did this.
I do too.
So they have a top, middle, and a bottom storage for technologies, some of which are agnostic and they don't have any requirement of where you place them. But some of them specify on the top of the card whether they're a top card, middle card, or bottom.
And that's because it affects those areas of your board. So it kind of either builds it out, allows more storage, things like that, which is really interesting.
Yeah, but the problem is like, crud, I put this card here at the top, and now there's one. I
just bought this really cool card last turn, and now I want this one, but it has to go in the bottom.
Yeah.
So then you have to sacrifice the card you already had there, but you still get the victory points, which is really nice.
Yeah, so you don't lose points by getting it, but you just lose the ability.
Card. And some of them are really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so I had a really nice system going early in the game where I got resources when I built on building, and then I got resources from walking on other people's buildings. Yeah, and then you countered it by getting the one that gave you a gold anytime I wanted.
And then you chose not to go to my building.
So I went to Adam's buildings instead.
Jerk.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different options here as far as ways to strategize to do nice comboing with your technologies, and I like that. And I like the way that they're selected to go into specific slots in many cases.
And the tension, I think, is built in where you don't know where the people are going to be sick at. Yeah. So, I mean, each time you play it, it's not going to play the same way. Yeah. So I like that part of it as well.
Yeah, and the other actions are the placement of the healthy workers into the production sites, because your production sites, for the most part, do require a worker to be assigned to them. You also have the option of contributing them to the castle.
It's like it's getting built.
Yeah, so each era you'll get scoring based upon who has the most in the castle. So, there's a lot of victory points to be had if you contribute there, but you're losing those workers.
And there's one-time bonuses, which could be really useful as well.
Yeah, so there's that, and then the last is curing them, and that's where you spend herb to add them, and you can heal as many as you can afford to heal, but you're generally only going to be able to heal like 2 to 4 because there's...
Yeah, I generally did 4 because I would have 3 here and then 1 over here, and I wanted to cure them before I actually did that action that was negated, whereas either minimized my production or my movement or whatever.
Yeah, Adam had some that let him heal his people more rapidly.
And I felt a little cheated because every time I would buy a card, it was okay. Yeah. And then the next card to flip up, which is generally Adam's turn, was amazing. Yeah. And so I didn't get those amazing cards. Yeah. So I felt a little disgruntled.
Yeah, I can't complain. I had decent cards, but he kept getting the ones that I had played with when I played with Miranda and I knew how to use, and I'm like, oh man, I want that card, but he got them.
Right.
So, it worked out though, because my combo actually did pay off pretty good. So, then after you've taken basically all your actions, we're going to move to the second year of that era. Right. And I should mention on the era cards, there's 2 sections to them. There's one that is basically during the course of the game,
like an ongoing ability,
and it's you're gonna, if you complete the task on it, you're gonna move your scoring marker up, and you will get influence and also victory points at the end of the game,
which is cumulative, which is really nice.
And you can cap out 4 for each era. There's only 4 levels, but
altogether it would be 3, 6, 9, 12 points.
Yeah. So you're going to get a lot of points for doing that. Actually, is it 2, 4, 6, 9 total?
2, 4, 6. Oh, 9. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's 9.
I don't math hard.
Yeah. So there's 9 points for each era, so 27 points you could potentially get.
And plus you get the influence, which is going to be more points potentially, and other resources that you get.
And then the top has kind of an end game or end of the era scoring that's based on different conditions.
And it's always just straight victory points.
Yeah. And everybody can contribute and get that. That's the nice thing. It's not like competitive on that. It's not like whoever gets first place gets the most, other than the fact that they'll get more victory points by default.
And they're usually pretty straightforward. Like the first one was you get a victory point for every food that you got.
Yeah. So if you don't spend your food, you can have 5.
Yeah, you get up to 5
Problem
points.
is you got to spend that food when you're walking if you pick up sick people. So it's a trade-off, but you could max your production on food, but honestly I wouldn't. Food is less valuable if you're building than anything
Food
else.
becomes so important in the third era.
Yeah.
Because you're just got so many sick people.
Yeah, to walk around.
And I'm either missing 1 or 2 food to be able to go to the area I want to go to.
Yeah.
So I got to go somewhere else.
Although, there could be a strategy, because if you get in all those sick people, that's a lot of points at the top if you can get them and store them. So it depends on how you play, I guess, really. But, we were all build heavy.
We were.
Then we were all getting, so we didn't get very many points from that track at the end of the game. I think you got 3, and I got, all the rest of us got 0. So, you could go that route. It's an option. I don't know. It might pay out better than we think. Mm-hmm. But, we were all building stuff and spending all of our workers to produce.
Yeah.
So then, at the end of every era, then we score not only the scoring card over there, but we also score the end of era scoring based upon who contributed the most to the castle. And then we're going to reset up and go through it again. But you
do that 3 times, or
six
total 6 rounds.
6 rounds, 3 eras. And then, at the end of game, you're going to total up various things, such as how many resources you got left. Now, that's one thing that was kind of confusing, because it says basically for every set of 3 resources, you get 3 victory points, which normally it would be 1 victory point for 3 resources. Usually there's not a good exchange rate for them.
Right, or just a victory point for every unused resource or something. Yeah. Something pretty straightforward. This wasn't.
No, it was strangely worded, and I still don't think that
we may not have played it right.
It seems to me it should be 1 victory point for every 3 resources, because that seems overly powerful. Just build resources and don't spend them then.
Yeah. Well, because I mean realistically, if you built everything up to 5, you would get 25 points.
It'd be 5 times 5 resources, so that'd be 15. 5
I
resources.
mean, I was thinking of one for every 5. But
Well,
still.
no, yeah, one for every. Actually, I guess it'd be 8 times. Yeah, you're right. It'd be 24 because you got 5 times 5 resources, and then you're. Well, no, the coin's not counted.
Oh, it does not. Okay.
Because it's one.
I thought
for,
it did.
And that's the other thing. One for every 2 coin. So you're actually getting half credit for the coin when it's the most valuable and the most difficult to get. So that seemed a little odd.
Yeah, and we may actually got that wrong because it was so oddly worded.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, and other than that, you're just scoring up score tracks and the victory points you accumulated during the course of the game, and whoever's got the most points at the end's a winner. It sounds simple as far as the scoring goes, but the game itself, there's a lot of choices that are tough to make, and you start out with only 2 workers, so. And by the end, you got 4. Adam had mentioned he didn't like. He thought it was more fun at the beginning, whereas I was the reverse. I thought when I had 4 workers, I enjoyed it more because I had more choices that I was getting to accomplish things.
Well, I think the tension was there because what I did with my first 2 workers, I wanted to do again with the other 2 workers, but I couldn't because that block was used. So there was just more tension in the decision making process on like. When do I do it? Do I do it now or do I do it with my 4th worker because it can make a difference on how much resources I get, things like that. So.
But then I think the later game was more tension based upon all the sick people.
Oh, I agree. Totally.
Surrounding my areas. I'm like, I have to get through here and there's sick people everywhere and I can't treat them all because I don't have enough food.
Right.
So, and if I did, I wouldn't have enough space in the inn to store them. So.
But yeah, there is a lot of tension built in this game and I like that a lot.
Yeah. So I was actually pleasantly surprised with how much I like this game. I think it's a little finicky, but if you can get past that, and if they hopefully release some more clarified rules, so we don't have the house rule,
maybe some errata or something to be able to clarify those rules that we got.
In its current form, though, I still enjoy this game a lot. I'm probably going to give it, in its current state, a 7.5. I think.
Okay, yeah, I think 7.5 is a good score. I mean. It's just between the board, having difficulty looking at the board, and some of those rule clarifications, it did take the enjoyment back a little bit.
Yeah.
But not a lot. It's got potential to be an 8.5 game.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. So I think if we can get, if they can get some of the kinks worked out of the rule book, and if we can get back in here and play it with a little more clarity, it's going to probably increase my level of interest. And I really enjoyed.
I enjoyed the event deck.
That's one thing we didn't talk about. The event deck is a mini expansion. This is very much like Scythe. I love this. So as you're going around, as you walk down these paths where these exclamation points are, you can pay a bread to flip one over. If it's a check mark, hey, it was. If you get a check mark, you take the top card and you get to read it and decide. There's 3 choices, much like Scythe if you played it, and you have to pay the cost, but you get the benefit. And the first one's kind of the weakest, and then the last one's the most powerful one.
Not always. I think the one where I did my second choice was definitely more powerful than the third one. But like Scythe too, it's got a little bit of that tongue-in-cheek humor to it. So where it's like a little twisted.
Yeah.
Just like if you do it, you might get a really good benefit, but you're like murdering people or something.
Yeah.
So or letting them die because you didn't treat
putting them to work in your laboratory.
In your lab.
So, but then you also get to take the token, and at the end of the game, you can get some 1 to 3 victory points. Not a lot, but it's a little
something. It could make a difference
because you're getting not only the victory points, but you're also getting whatever the reward is. So there's still, and these are all, I think, so far all of them we've seen have been positive. We haven't seen any negative ones, so I'm assuming they're all going to be very much like that. So yeah, we didn't play with this the first time around. We played with it this time around. I like these a lot.
Yeah,
and I will not put them away now. I will put them away as with the game, but I'm not
good.
I'm not going to just leave them out. But if I can find a way to introduce these to all the games
into real life.
Yeah. If I can just make my life that simple, you just A, B, or C. I'm going to pick C and get the reward for it.
Miranda's got to be a lab experiment.
I think she kind of is already. All right, so that's our thoughts on Pest. If you have thoughts on Pest, the game, not about your kid sister, kid brother, or Rob. Yeah, well, actually, go ahead and share your thoughts about Rob. I would love to see your thoughts about Rob, because he is kind of a pest. But, if you can share them with us, we'd love to hear. And
absolutely.
if you've got a chance to play this, let us know what you think. If you haven't got a chance to play it,
but would like
If you'd
to.
like to, let us know what you think on
Yeah.
that too. It won't be too long before Gen Con will be here, and we got to decide what we're going to take with us. I
That's
don't know
true.
which games are going to make the cut, but this one could be.
Could be it. If people are interested.
All right. Well, until next time, don't be a pest. Come back and visit us, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Bye.
Bye.